Hey OT dudes and dudettes. In this episode of Your First OT Job, I'll be talking about the OT job interview. This video will give you ideas of how to prepare and feel more prepared when you walk into your first OT job interview. You're watching Your First OT Job. This series of videos is geared towards new grad students who have just passed their boards and will be entering the occupational therapy job market. These are the videos that I wish I had watched when searching for an OT job as a new grad. My name is Jeff, and I am an occupational therapist who works in acute care and acute rehab in the hospital. I make OT videos and have a website, OTDUDE.com, with free resources for students and new grads. Interviews. Okay, let's get functional. When we think of interview, typically what comes to mind is probably the in-person interview in which you dress up, arrange a meeting time and place, and talk to a supervisor or a hiring manager or something. Nowadays, interviews may still include this step, or it may skip it altogether. Other hiring processes may be multi-steps. For example, you may start off filling out an online job application, go through a screening process, which could turn you down if you don't meet certain criteria such as not having enough job experience. You may then go through an email interview, although this one may be quite rare, then a phone interview, and finally in-person interview or several in-person interviews. With COVID-19, virtual interviews are becoming more popular, such as through Zoom. For virtual interviews, it is important to still look professional. Be sure to test your equipment, such as your microphone and camera with a friend, before you do the real thing. Be sure you have good lighting. Don't be too dark or too blown out either. If it's still relatively bright, you can sit next to a window and use broad daylight. If it's getting pretty dark, you can probably use artificial light, but make sure it's not too yellow or it's casting too many shadows, making you look kind of unflattering. Also, pay attention to your background and what it's going on back there. When you do the real thing, go to a quiet room and be sure you have a stable internet connection. Remember to look at the webcam when speaking and not at your screen. And you can stick a sticky note or something next to the lens to remind you to look up at the lens. If possible, position the camera pointing downwards instead of looking upward to make you look more flattering. No matter virtual or in person, pay attention to your body language and posture. There are plenty of resources on YouTube on how to prepare and look in job interviews in general, but I wanted to go over more of the interview questions. The types of questions, especially the specific ones, will probably be based on the setting you are applying for: pediatrics, adults, mental health, or some other specialty. But the general questions will usually be asked most of the time. It does not matter if it will be one-on-one or a panel interview. The questions you will answer and how you will answer them will probably be the same. Usually, the interview starts off with you telling the interviewers a little bit about yourself, like a personal bio or a summary of it. Practice this one several times until it comes natural to you. It is important that you do not ramble and talk too much or go off on a tangent. It should just be a few minutes and that's it. One general strategy that I have learned to use is the STAR method, which stands for situation, task, action, and result. What was the situation that came up? What was your role or responsibility? What was your action? And finally, what was the result of your actions? Remembering to use the STAR method will keep you on track to answer the main points when you are stressed out in an interview. If you get lost in your words and where you are in answering, wrap up your response with the results of the STAR method. I won't go too much into this as you can Google this method with more examples, but let's get more specific to occupational therapy. Before your interview, one way to prepare is to reflect on your past experiences. It can be OT, but does not have to be. Try to reflect and think of several stories that can describe your quality traits. The more, the better. One strategy I learned was to use each of your fingers to represent a story, such as 5 stories, and to use each of these to answer your interview questions when it's relevant and encountered for the scenario. For example, my thumb can represent a story when I had a difficult client, family members, and a disagreement with them. My index finger can be a story when I was really stressed out and worked out a problem by using a team approach and had good results, etc., etc., etc. Nowadays, A lot of interview questions may be situational, based on how you handled something in the past or how you would hypothetically handle something if you never encountered that situation before. An example of this type of question from the AOTA website is, tell me about a situation where you needed to advocate for occupational therapy. What did you say or do? So, these type of situational or behavioral questions can be difficult if you're not prepared for them because they may catch you off guard. This is why having several stories thought out of common situations will help you to answer any similar type of question potentially, because you can draw on these stories and use them as an example. While I will not go over a list of these specific types of questions, you can probably find more of these online. I will give you some ideas based on what's generally asked or what's usually asked that you can prepare for. If you practice for how to answer them, then you will be much more confident to prepare to answer any type of situational or behavioral question because you have these stories. This is similar to how you cannot memorize all the Nbcot questions, but if you know certain concepts, you can probably figure out how to answer the question. The same applies here for your interview. Here are some topics to get you started. Try to think of similar ones that relate to soft skills, to how you would handle basically difficult situations. You can probably find more ideas online. Some topics to think of are stories that include time management, leadership, a difficult client, encountering a difficult situation, a workplace dispute, stress management, organization, prioritization, handling a mistake you made, how you troubleshooted a situation, how you advocated for your client or a family member, how you would bring up a difficult subject to the team. What have you done that was unsafe and how you handled it? And more specifically, since you are potentially a new grad, questions probably related to that. How would you ask for help? When would you ask for help? What would you do if you did not know what to do? How can the team support you? How would you handle a difficult caseload? How would you better manage your time? Or how would you stay more organized? What would you do if you were falling behind on documentation? So, what do you do with all these topics and questions? Try to think of a situation, whether from a previous job, in school, in fieldwork, or even, if you can't, maybe your personal life where you had a hardship to answer these type of questions. Try to keep things simple. I'm not saying to think of a different story for every single type of question. It is okay to reuse some stories, but try to have more than say like just 2 stories to make it more interesting for you to draw on. Of course, don't make anything up or lie. If you haven't experienced such a situation, just answer honestly and say how you would handle it hypothetically. Practice, 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 such as in front of a mirror, with another person, or record yourself on video and review your performance. Another thing to prepare for is to have some questions at the end. You can write a list of them down to bring with you. These questions can be ones you thought of during the interview too. Good questions to ask for new grads can be mentorship, continuing education and training, side projects you can work on, how you will be evaluated and on your performance and how often, in-service opportunities, team building activities, and company culture outside of work, like potlucks or something. Who doesn't like to eat? Many people like to thank the interviewers afterwards with an email or something. This is a good idea even if you don't feel like taking the job, as a nice gesture for the interviewer for taking the time out of their busy day to interview. Like and subscribe to this channel if you like this content so that you do not miss a single video. Thanks for watching and look sharp.